This week on the Kojima Frequency, we have game developer and writer James Clinton Howell, known for his work with Kojima Productions and Camouflage, and for writing Driving Off the Map, a formal analysis of Metal Gear Solid 2. Okay, I am behind the curve on trying Asahi Super Dry, and I will say this is super dry. But I like it, so that works.
What is Asahi?
Oh, it's a Asahi Super Dry. It's a Japanese beer.
Oh, okay. Cool. That's what I thought it was, but it's the sort of thing where it's like, I'm like 80% sure that my frame of reference for that word is correct, but I'm not confident enough in that to just like jump right out and say it. That's all like I asked for clarity. So thank you.
Apparently it's brewed in Canada.
Really?
Yeah, and it's self-proclaimed Japan's #1 beer.
Huh. Well, I guess both of those things can be true. That's globalization for you there, right?
I was about to say, that's globalization, huh?
Yeah.
I feel like I've tried a few of Japan's #1 lagers at this point. I think I've had a few of them.
Yeah, there is not a hint of sweetness in that.
I'm more of a plum wine type of girl, so...
No, I have aged out of the point where alcohol is fun anymore. So I'm like, man, you know that the adage that water is the real adult beverage. Like when you hit that point, you can 9 times out of 10 bet that is somebody who, if they like run into a wall or hit their knee on the corner of a couch, they're gonna be feeling that for like a week. So that's sort of the neighborhood where I live now, time-wise.
That's also the age where damn it becomes darn it.
Yeah, my son hasn't reached the age where he understands language yet, so we're still sort of easing into that.
You've got time.
Yeah,
I've got two doors between me and my kids, so I can say what I want.
I mean, I've cursed in front of his kids, for the record.
Oh, Jesus.
Didn't mean to. It was an accident.
I think most of us who have been who kind of like get old enough to where like you have friends who have kids have had that sort of accidental moment where you just sort of speak a little too casually in front of a kid and like cuss, and you just like feel horrible for like the rest of the day.
Yeah, that's how I felt.
Anyway.
I was in the car when she did it because
they were going to get dinner and like we were about to record, and I feel like I tell this story every episode, but whatever. And we pick up the phone and he's like, "Hey, sorry guys, I'm with my kids." And the first thing I go is like, "Holy fuck!" And
you were just so excited to like be on the phone with the kids.
It's like, I've heard so much about you. Why don't you like Metal Gear? Hey everyone, this is Days Ahead.
Yo, it's Apache Smash.
And I'm Nitroid. You're listening to the Kojima Frequency.
Speaking of which, I was actually going to say, speaking of cursing, that is not Metal Gear. Well, also kind of Metal Gear, but more cursing.
They go hand in hand very often.
A little bit.
It depends on what difficulty you're playing, but yes.
It's interesting to me, we were talking about like how we experience like curse words, because when you brought that up, I was a senior in high school and when Metal Gear Solid came out. So, by 7th grade, you pretty much know all of the vernacular that is in the adult language. And yet, when I played Metal Gear Solid 4, which I didn't get to until college, I like lost it. It was like when I think Octopus, when she said everything's so fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Like I was like, oh, she said there's a fucking Metal Gear game. It was like that experience of being a child and learning those curse words that came back again. It was very nostalgic.
It's a big step up from Raiden saying "my butt" in Metal Gear Solid 2.
Oh, right.
to the
F-bombs.
And I know Metal Gear Solid 4 raised the stakes on so many ways, and that's one of them.
There was a big deal made about that too. It was this is the first Metal Gear with an F word in it.
Man, I remember the speculation on that like, is it going to be Snake? Would Snake say that?
We were all hoping.
And there's this sort of it's really interesting how like our sense of those characters, how well they match up with those sort of like very informal behaviors. Because Solid Snake, he's a very disciplined man. He's very focused. He's got one thing that he's good at, and he does it really, really well. And so he's this like very big, larger than life person. And there's almost something about speaking very casually, like swearing, that almost seems to maybe pull it down a little bit. And so I kind of am glad that it wasn't Snake that did that, because there's this sort of mythic quality that's retained, and I like that personally. It seems like it would have felt out of character to me.
He's too sage-like.
Yeah, there's something almost kind of samurai reserved about it. That level of emotion, the amount of emotion it takes to swear, is not necessarily. I think the closest I can think of him getting is, "No, that is not Solid Snake." Just like indignant.
Emoting is kind of a foreign language for this guy.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Big Boss would say it though.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, Big Boss, totally. That's one of the differences between them. Big Boss is more emotionally accessible.
So, James, for anybody here who does not know who you are, and I know this is like the hardest question for anybody on Earth to answer, but tell us a little bit about who you are, the work you've done.
Oh, sure. Yeah, my name is James Howell. Call me Jay. That's the name that my ears respond to. James is what it is in print and on my resume. But
pause.
James is my father.
I'm glad
right?
you said that. I'm glad you said that, because I just tried out the. I'm so sorry for interrupting. I just need to say this because it's been on the back of my mind.
Sure.
I just tried out. I just downloaded and tried out for the first time Silent Hill 2 Enhanced Edition. Because I've never played that, and it was incredible. I'm so glad I dodged the HD collection, and because I actually have a PC disc of Silent Hill 2, which I kind of fumbled that originally, but I'm gonna get into that story offline. But the point I'm trying to make is I felt a little weird about saying James a bunch after seeing like Maria like convulsing in that like final boss, like going James. I'm like, oh. Anyways.
I was wondering where you were going with that. I was like, you just want to talk about Silent Hill 2 now?
Swerve? Nah, I didn't mean to completely throw us off, but please, Jay, continue.
No, it's actually very funny that you bring that up, because there was a point like after Silent Hill 2 came out that there were a couple of people who said they had the exact same sort of dissonance of like feeling a real strong emotional resonance with Silent Hill 2, getting real big feelings from it, and then sort of having that sort of reaction. So thank you for the nostalgia. I haven't felt that since 2002.
I've played it on PlayStation, and I actually have both discs. I should be a millionaire in like 5 years. But that something about that, once again, going back to like enhancing, like reimagining your feelings. Like, this is how I remember Silent Hill. You know how they always say like, this is not how I remember a game when they play like an old game, and it doesn't have the fidelity that you thought it did or you remember. This is how I remember Silent Hill 2. And you guys can cut all this out. Again, I feel like a big asshole for interrupting. But please, Jay, continue.
Thank you.
That's very funny. Yeah.
Well, yeah. But yeah, my name is James, and if you look, the name that I often used when sort of putting stuff up earlier was James Clinton Howell, which is my full name, because there seemed to be enough James Howells. I think there was a baseball player, there's a Welsh minister who wrote a lot of liturgical poetry, and I'm like, you know what, man, someone just might get us confused. So I'm gonna put James Clinton Howell up there, and let me tell you, it works. No one has ever confused me for a Welsh liturgical poet. So victory. And but yes, you can call me Jay. And yeah, I am a game developer, game designer. I've been working in video games for about 16 years and got my start with, kind of like my first paid gig. It's just like a ridiculous dream job falling out of the sky for my team of cohorts to localize Hideo Kojima's weblog. And so Hideo blog was my first job, and that was amazing because I was a tremendous tremendous Metal Gear fan. And from there, I had a company was called Delta Head Translation Group, and we were contracted with Kojima. Well, we contracted with Kojima Productions, not like on a retainer basis, but just job by job. And we did a lot of their promotional material for about 3 years, I want to say, up until after the release of Metal Gear Solid 4. And that was a blast. I had just graduated college undergrad. That was a wonderful sort of transition to sort of for me to suss out whether or not I wanted to go into video game development or education, which was the other sort of candidate for life direction. And so I went to a master's program, did video game work, wrote a lot about Metal Gear Solid for PlayStation, first PSM, then its reincarnation as PlayStation Official Magazine, and some for Hardcore Gamer, and later wrote a piece for OneUp.com about war economy and Metal Gear Solid 4. And in that time, I also worked on Metal Gear Solid 4 for localization, and that was a great memory, and that is a pleasure to be associated with that game. And I also wrote an essay called "Driving Off the Map: Formal Analysis of Metal Gear Solid 2," which, for all of the work I've done in video games, seems to be one of my most enduring legacies, because I routinely have people come up to me and say, "Thank you for writing this. This is one of the best pieces of video game criticism I've ever read." If anybody knows my gun-shy nature towards self-promotions, they will understand that I absolutely have to have evidence of that for me to be able to repeat that accolade. So yeah, and so that's fantastic. Yeah, gosh, I made a big old, big video series about Metal Gear Solid 3 Foxhound Rank walkthrough, kind of showing different ways that you could handle different scenarios. One of the beauties of that game's design is that you can tackle the same areas about 5 different ways because it's just this big playground. And so I wanted to kind of show that off, and a way of kind of exploring it for myself, right? You learn something better when you teach it, and that was kind of the exercise of that for me, and many people enjoyed that. From there I shifted focus to kind of other games, career video game work, and currently, I am now a full-on developer. Worked on Republic VR, and most recently Marvel's Iron Man VR. I was a writer and narrative designer on that one. So yeah, that's me. Hope that wasn't too much of an info dump.
I kept thinking the whole time, I'm like, all right, well, I could say something about this, but then he said this, which was more interesting, but then that's also really interesting. So now I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I like, it's funny because I was telling a friend about this. I was like, yeah, I'm interviewing like James Howell, and I remember him doing this essay with the marble background, and I remember just like going into it back in the day, and he's like, "Oh, you mean the guy who does the Foxhound Big Boss guides?" And I'm like, "What?" And I thought I had the full story, but I merely had one slice of the pizza.
Oh,
yeah,
well,
I didn't know that was you. I didn't know that was you who made the Foxhound MGS3 guide. I want to make an updated version now, but like, yes, I'm due to rewatch that really soon. I didn't know that was you. That's so cool.
Oh, also, Jay, for context here, Apache is our resident speedrunner. I mean, he's a guy who can beat Metal Gear Solid 3 literally blindfolded.
No way.
Yeah, not quite. I can do all the bosses. I'm working on doing the whole game blindfolded. I'm not there yet. That's my current project.
Like, if you can do if you could do like the pain blindfolded, can you do the pain blindfolded?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
No way. That terrain is insane.
I've got that on. I've posted videos of that, and I've done that live on stream.
Oh my god, I gotta see that.
Just recently, he was on SGDQ doing a Tuxedo Foxhound run.
Wearing a tuxedo.
That was you. I missed.
You guys are like starstruck with
me.
each other. Holy shit, this is so weird.
Yeah, no, I got to say, like, because I dug so deep into that game. See, I'm kind of like the opposite of a speedrunner, because one of the things I like to do is go as slowly and observantly and with as much curiosity as possible. And that is not to say that that is like in any way incompatible with speedrunning, right? But like that's what I do at the and that is how I spend the majority of my time. And then I'll do like the run to get the rank, and then I'm just like, all right, time to drive on the freeway at 5 miles an hour. So anybody who can do a speed run of that is like, that's crazy, because I have a lot of respect for that. So that's really awesome to know.
Well, my plan with making a Foxhound guide was trying to find the middle ground where I could make it accessible for any person, but also show how to play the game better through learning some of the speedrun strategies, because we don't really like glitch through the game in 3. We just play it as well as possible, and that entails playing it fast as well. And I totally agree with what you said about it being a playground. Every single room is a playground, and there's so many different ways to approach it, and it goes from like the faster you want to make it, the harder you make it. And it's like trying to find where the middle ground is, where this is fast, but it's also very accessible for any player.
Oh my god. Do you know about the Black Lodge glitch?
The what glitch, sorry?
I call it the Black Lodge glitch, and it does not help you in any way. But it's the exit that they left in Svatogorny West. Not the area with the big cabin that they use in Metal Gear Online, but the area just to the left of that. Yeah. The little portal that they left in the middle of the level that soldiers can blip into.
I don't know anything about this, but I need to know about this.
Okay. This is so good.
Anything about this?
Yeah,
I'm
just sitting here with a popcorn, like, yeah.
So this is so good. This is so good. Okay, so I was trying to do a run through that was like all pain bees, and see like how could I use pain bees as much as possible to do this. And the premise was flawed. I thought that when you have the hornet's nest during the pain fight, you throw them down, the bees go into there. It's like, why? because we want more room. And so they go into this, and then you have those hornet's nests, and then you can throw the hornet's nest out, and I thought that the bees would pop out of that, and then if you're wearing the pain camo, you could use that and orchestrate it. That was wrong. However, that led to playing around in that area with all of the hornets that are there, because that is one of the areas that has the most hornets environmentally. So, and this is where it's leading up to. Okay, so the entrance to the level that is on the right, it's the entrance that's connected to the big area with the cabin.
Yeah.
You come into the area from that entrance into Svatogorny West. You go to the guards that are in that area. There's like a fallen log. You're kind of like right near where you're about to run into the end. And you sneak around, have the pain camo on, shoot a bee's nest. They get on you, and then they go to the guards. The guard can run toward the embankment that is separating the first and second half of the level, and they'll disappear into it. And then, in the same way that if you chase a guard off screen with the bees, they'll eventually come back. Like the bees just gave up, and the guard's like, "Well, we gotta go back to work." They will pop out of that embankment, and the only thing I can think of is that there's an exit. There's a little exit marker that was left there. That's not actually an exit in the terrain, but the marker was left there. So the guard AI, when they're being chased by a bee, goes immediately to the nearest exit, and then they blip into it, and then they pop back out. And so, yeah, you can actually chase a bunch of guards into there, completely depopulate the area, and then wait for them to just, kind of whistling, holding their AKs and pineapples, and popping back out into the field. I encourage you to check it out. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I will. I love stuff like that, and like I feel like the how much info is out there about the glitches in the game is so limited, and it's so separated across old YouTube videos that have like 40 views and stuff. There's so many like glitches that have been performed on YouTube that we don't even understand how they work now. There's so much to be explored with MGS3 still.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things that is really interesting about that, especially with Metal Gear titles, they are so tightly developed, and there's two things. One, they're very tightly developed and clearly QA'd back and forth and just like every bug ironed out. And second is that emulation has made this less of an obstacle, but they're they have to pass certs. They're on PlayStation systems, MGS 1 through 3, and so there's a real lockdown that they have on bugs and things like that. So when you find one, it feels like you've just cracked a code or something.
Yeah.
So no, I think your speedrunning is fantastic, and I am going to watch that again.
Yeah. Thank you. I think your Foxhound guide's really good.
Jason and I were just sitting back, letting you two go. That was
a little tear coming down my eye. Yeah, you guys should follow each other on Twitch or Twitters and socials, and I'd love to see what blossoms in this battlefield.
Metal Gear Solid 3 is Metal Gear Solid 5 has some of this too. Metal Gear Solid 5 has more of this than Peace Walker or MGS4 did, but not as much as Metal Gear Solid 3. Is just like sheer shenanigan opportunities.
That's a great term. Shenanigan opportunities.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is amazing about the Metal Gear series overall, and this has become even more pronounced, I think, as it has gone on, particularly to Metal Gear Solid 5, which I'm replaying, is there's something very easy about shooting and throwing a grenade that makes like so many of the options that you have available for those responses to challenges. That's it's a fairly one-to-one formula. You point it and you shoot it, nothing happens, and that's it. And the series creativity really comes out when they lean into the stealth and the non-lethal options. So Metal Gear Solid 5 does a great job with this, with the the stun arm and some of the stuff you can do with the boxes and things like that. And Metal Gear Solid 3 though just really broke the bank with how much they explored that, I think.
There's just nothing like it. There's no game like it. There's no game that gives you that much creative freedom with how you approach things, and I don't think there'll ever be a game made like it again. I don't think. I just can't see it happening, and I struggle to explain this all the time. But I just talk about, like, even in speedrunning, you look at the 10 best players, and every single one of them play differently. There's no, this is how you do it. There's so much variation, to the point where I can look at a person playing, and if it's just the game footage, I can tell you who it is.
Really?
So, yeah, for sure. I used that to catch someone on the leaderboard once who was trying to upload another run under a different name.
Oh, I see. Oh, wow. So everybody's kind of got their signature way of playing.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
that's interesting.
Have any of you seen a YouTuber named Big Saru?
Yes, I got compared to him once. It was one of the best days of my life.
Big Saru.
Like, he's a guy who plays Metal Gear Solid and usually MGS3, but he sets up what I can only describe as Rube Goldberg machines in MGS3.
Yeah.
And I can't even give you an example. You're just going to have to look him up and watch some of his videos. But using every possible mechanic, he will string these reactions together to create these crazy results where he'll start by like laying a magazine in a weird area and it'll end with like 10 guards flying in a star pattern. It's ridiculous.
I think I've seen. I think if I haven't seen those, I've seen things like it. There was somebody who had a video of capturing some chain reaction or some sort of symmetrical arrangement of guards blowing up in a bunch of different directions, but using the in-game camera to like catch just the right moment that they blow up and then taking the picture. So it's like not only do they set up the chain reaction, but they also manage to have the skill to get the player character in the right place and use this one tool to create to kind of cap it off.
Right, they know exactly where to be to see it and not set off an alarm.
And I gotta say, I have so much respect for that, because this is not visible in the Metal Gear Solid 3 Foxhound rank walkthrough, but almost every single clip of that even if it's just so here's one way that you can run up to this first vantage point, because I find it easier to sort of just my it comes from partly a background in teaching, but also referencing the way that I learn, is to sort of build incrementally. So if there's a level that has basically 3 parts in it, find multiple ways of getting to the first step and then start to focus on the second and then sort of build up from there. But every single one of those smaller segments easily has like 5 or 10 different takes behind it. And so, and there's also, so there's strategizing, there is making sure to represent the best version of the strategy to the person, and there's also camera work. And so there are so many different considerations that go into every single one of those shots. It took years to do for a reason. I was also doing other things, of course, but yeah. So when I see something like that is so well captured, I have so much respect for it, because I know how much work goes into that in terms of patience and execution.
So I know you can't talk too much in terms of details, but as a game designer yourself, how much of that philosophy how much of that have you carried with you into the work you make?
Well, that's interesting. I'm exploring Unity right now. My background is in design, and my experience is in design, narrative design, and less on the technical mechanical side. But I'm sort of broadening that by hopping into Unity and building what's basically a walking sim. And I'm finding that many of the design approaches that Kojima Productions have taken with the Metal Gear games, I obviously studied these games pretty intensely with MGS2 forward. And one of the biggest approaches that they take that I always keep close to heart is to make sure that interactive design and narrative complement each other and reflect each other, and also functionally are the same thing. I think Metal Gear Solid 2 is one of the best examples of this, because that is a game whose story is about being a sequel, and it is also a sequel, and that's the sort of thing that I don't know if this was part of the creative process of it, but clearly there was some awareness of this is a sequel. So what if we make a game about the experience we're having, making this? And the sort of the self-referential aspect of the Kojima Productions games is not something that I've reproduced in my own work. It's something that I think that they have excellent claim to and do very well. It's not the sort of thing that I myself create, but the thing that is important is to make sure that whether it's referential or just simply coming from the same place, that narrative is built on design, that you look to the mechanics, you look to the flow, you look to what can be done, and then you write to that. And that is one of the biggest things that I've taken from sort of all my deep dives into Kojima games. And they have had the opportunity to do that on some very impressive, very focused levels, like designing the hardware, right? Like Peace Walker was designed to hardware. That game, there are many features of that game that make more sense if you think of it as a PSP game. And so things like that they've had the opportunity to do, which have resulted in some very one-of-a-kind games. But yeah, that's kind of a long way around, but that's one of the biggest things that I've carried with me.
And some of that too was expressed in Driving Off the Map. That
I'm sorry,
awareness of being some of what you just said of that awareness of being a sequel was part of Driving Off the Map as well.
Yes, yeah, Driving Off the Map was very much about how the game signals its status as a sequel, not necessarily by the number that's on the box, but by how the mechanics are elaborated, how the story beats show up, and how those story beats then relate to each other. Because it's not about there's some new material in terms of the story beats and the like, and that mostly happens at the end and the mechanics with Raiden. But what changes is the relationships between them. And that shift in relationships between known content is intellectually interesting to me, and also I find creatively instructive.
I think part of the what you can attribute the longevity of that article to is that a lot of people who played that game could tell that something deeper was going on, but they weren't able to articulate it. And when you wrote that article, you were able to articulate a lot of those feelings.
You know what? I attribute a quote from the good men at Red Letter Media. It is you might have not noticed it, but your brain did. And that's
Yeah.
pretty much the summary of driving off the map for me. But yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, one of the things that that I remember when I put it up there, I'm like, should I even publish this? This is just so like everybody knows this. Ocelot says it. What? Well, here goes. Turned out here goes was the way to go. But yeah, that's one of the things that I think criticism can do, is to speak to shared experience and to find a way of sort of bringing out something that people can feel and that they can identify, but maybe not express. And you know, I know that there's an idea that criticism ruins an experience, that analyzing it takes some of the magic away from it. But I think that maybe that's just maybe doing it in a way that is sort of maybe overly rational and doesn't give enough honor to the intuitive experience. Because I think that once you read something that is good criticism and then you jump back into the work that they're talking about, maybe not that same day, but maybe a week later, so you've had time to sort of forget the details and let it settle in on a gut level, you can enjoy it in a new way and enjoy it more. And that's what I'd like to try to do. And I'm glad that I seem to have succeeded at least once in all my efforts.
Have you had as many people come to you with similar comments about Monstrous Births? Because I don't see that one discussed as much, and I wish it were. I try to tell people about that more often. But personally speaking, I'm not an enormous fan of Metal Gear Solid 4. As
I picked that up.
Some people may know this about me.
Really?
If you watch I don't know if you've watched this show, but if you listen to any episode, please at least listen to the one about Nitroid popping off about MGS4.
But
the title speaks for itself.
But you are by far the only person I've heard who has made a coherent argument in favor of that game and has made it make some kind of sense to me.
Agreed.
So I try to link
you.
people to that article as often as I can.
Well, that's awesome. I thank you, because I have just kind of assumed that it sort of it missed whatever crest that driving off the map hit, and kind of just sort of dwindled and disappeared. And I'm like, you know what? Things have a habit of coming back around, so I'm going to keep this up, and I did. So thank you. I appreciate you linking people to it.
I also kind of owe you because thanks to you, I am quoted in an official piece of Metal Gear merchandise, so I can never forget that. And
Was that the show maybe?
That's the show maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I forgot about that.
Wait, we need some context, please.
This was a piece of promotional material that Kojima Productions put out for E3 2006, I think.
Yeah, 2006.
And it was kind of a playoff. I think there was an E3 publication called The Show Daily, and The Show Maybe was sort of a parody of that was all Kojima Productions focused material. And I wrote a couple of pieces for that. One of them was about Metal Gear Online, the subsistence version. And
it's like one sentence. It's practically nothing, but I'm in it, so I'm like, yes, I got in, just barely. I got my toe in the door.
Oh, one of the things I wanted was folks who were knowledgeable and passionate about it, and that's just you. So you were kind of a perfect candidate for that, for
Still
sure.
got one of those. Gotta
found a couple of copies of it the other day, and I'm like, wow, I'm older.
Yeah, I feel that. It's kind of a shame though, because you used to be able to read that among a lot of other things online, and as you know, as things change within Konami, within other companies, a lot of those old websites sort of fall to the wayside, and
I've noticed that
you sort of have to rely on the Internet Archive to sort of pick up the slack, and they don't always catch it. And the show maybe was one of those things that didn't quite get fully captured by the Internet Archive. So at the moment, there's really no way to read that.
Yeah, we this would be an interesting sort of update to Metal Gear Solid 2 to kind of look at, which is not information pruning, but information decay, which I think that we are absolutely encountering now, especially those of us who nerds that we are, were on the internet before handheld devices, and so a lot of the stuff that we know existed in that is no longer accessible.
Yeah.
If you don't know it existed, then you wouldn't even know to think to look for it. But we do know that it existed and it's not there. And that there's part of a cultural conversation that leads up to the present moment that always includes past conversation. And when that past conversation is gone, I think that it risks creating some sort of, I want to say, confusion about present meaning. That's really abstract and maybe
no, I
too
get what
vague,
you mean, because you can have a conversation with somebody about any topic really, and refer to something that you have a clear memory of that was accessible at one point that you have that you can recall, but that they may have no frame of reference for. They have no ability to know anything about, and that's a fact to you, but it's rumor to them.
Yes. Yeah, one of the things that I recently discovered that Internet Archive picked up the surface of, but didn't get the pun unintended substance of, but I'm going to keep it, is the little codes that you get when you beat Metal Gear Solid 2, and you can you put them into an online database and your records are uploaded there. I think I found the page that Konami had hosted when MGS2 was live, where you put in the code, but it doesn't, whatever widget is on the back end of that actually translates that into kind of a record, did not get captured, and kind of broke my heart a little bit. I felt like I was looking at a headstone.
Now, I may be wrong about this, and I don't know if it was ever finished, but I do recall that there was someone who either was trying to or had sort of reverse engineered those codes.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's beautiful.
I've got to look back into that because I could be wrong. I don't know. I know there was at least an attempt to figure out what those codes were and how to get the information out of them. Although then the problem becomes, once you know how they work, you can give yourself perfect stats.
You can do that easily anyway now with you can just input the information on the trainer and hit the score screen. So you can
I guess
do
it's
that
not
with
really a concern.
You can do it with the dev save as well on both 2 and 3. But I just felt like when Konami re-released the old PC version on GOG, like they put it on there, they should have put the website up again. I really feel like that was a missed opportunity by them, and I slated them for it on Twitter, and I think they put me on a shit list because they never retweet anything I post anymore. I did GDQ and they didn't even tweet about it.
There was also
I'm on a list.
a little package you could download if you got all the dog tags, if I remember right, where you'd get like a zip file full of wallpapers and sound effects.
Oh, cool. Oh man, I remember when this would have been around the time I think Metal Gear Solid 4 had not been released yet. It was between Subsistence and MGS4. There was the Autoclock.
Yes,
I have the code for that still.
I have that on my Mac.
Yeah, I love that thing. That was so cool.
Yeah, they had a Mac version and a Windows version, and you can still use the Windows version, sort of. But the Mac version was coded for Power PC, so it's essentially unusable now.
Oh man.
Right.
Yeah, there. Sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say it. Yeah, this was back in college, but yeah, I had it too.
Yeah, I know that's that was the sort of thing that kind of felt like, I think there was a Tobedashid, a Metal Gear Acid 2 themed wallpaper that was it was a dynamic wallpaper that there was a sort of a scrolling pattern of all the guns and stuff and cards from Metal Gear Acid 2, and this was a dynamic wallpaper based off that. But those are little things and that was from the same era, because Acid 2 and Subsistence were sort of they graduated at the same time from Kojima Productions. But yeah, those are the kind of things where it felt like a little gimmicky stuff in Metal Gear that makes it feel like the developers are really paying attention to you. That felt like that bleeding over into real life, and that's a real good feeling.
They're bringing back the I don't want to say they're bringing it back because that's not quite accurate, but for the first time in a while, Kojima is putting out sort of a competitive ranking with the director's cut of Death Stranding.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I guess with the racing mini game that they've put in that. Which,
yeah.
There's the racing, and then if you saw, like, there's essentially like the Death Stranding version of VR missions, where you like some missions you specialize in certain weapons, like the I forget what the fuck it's called, but the one that like you can take weapons, or not take weapons, like take packages from mules. They showed you doing essentially
like the sticky gun, yeah.
Yeah, the sticky gun. Thank you. They essentially showed like a VR missions, but in Death Stranding, you have the timer. You have this time. Oh my god! If VR missions had online rankings, holy fuck. But yeah, no, it's gonna be competitive. I'm looking forward to it.
What did you think of Death Stranding? I've been wanting to ask you this for a while.
I have a very. And I want to answer this at one point later. I do want to get back to Monstrous Births because now that you've asked that question, the thought is processing in the back of my head. But I have a very particular relationship with Death Stranding that is kind of a tearjerker. So I'm going to apologize ahead of time.
Go for it.
So I had a very long time buddy named Taxes, who was a tuxedo cat. And I had him since 2003. And he, during the last years of his life, he was kind of in a rough spot, needed fluids, needed medicine, that sort of thing. And when Death Stranding came out, he was on his last legs. And so one of the few things that we could do together was, I mean, he was just laying around, and it was just sort of like a matter of time of making sure that he had good quality of life. Until it was time to go, is he had this little puff bed, this sort of like really, really comfortable little bed that cats with cranky joints can just sort of sink into. And so the only thing we could do was I would put him in that, and he would just be purring, really happy to be near me. And I would put him up and put him on the couch beside me, and I would play Death Stranding because I didn't want to do anything that was too attention getting. I didn't want anything that would cause too much physical tension in my body because animals can kind of read and respond to that. And I wanted him to have a chill time. And so it's like I'm just sitting there. I'm playing 150 hours of Death Stranding, my little BB right there, because he's hanging out with me and chilling. And I beat that game the week before he had to go, and I've never played it since.
Oh man!
So
I'm sorry.
Well, thank you. It was a while back, and that was a tough one. That was a tough one, but I do have critical thoughts about Death Stranding that I'm okay to share. But that's kind of my big Death Stranding story.
So that game resonates for you very differently.
Let me get my tissues first.
Yes, yeah, that's why I wanted to give that warning that it's it's a very personal encounter with the game.
Oh God, and that last mission too. Oh
no, don't talk about that.
No, I got it. It was without it intending to. It wound up being very expressive of my moment, and I appreciated that. So I am not averse to hard emotions showing up in art, especially if they can sort of carry something real for you that you might have a harder time shouldering yourself. And actually, that's kind of a darkly funny way of referring to the first mission that you have to that same facility. Anyway, but yeah, no, that's so yeah, it wound up being very expressive of a challenging moment, and I was very grateful that that emotional beat happened in the game. But as far as Death Stranding on the whole goes, that was man. Where to begin? So, what are you interested in Death Stranding? Maybe we can start there.
It's funny. It's okay. I'm just gonna kick in and say this, starting off with this. Every time I talk about Death Stranding, I always explain that I feel like the micro that is the gameplay, but also in a sense the minor characters that you interact with, particularly on the top of my mind, the Elder, the Fanatic, I don't know. Anyways, my point is like I really enjoyed those experiences, the little details that you see in each shipment.
Moment to moment stuff.
The little moments, the little moments that you find messing around with BB. What was that term you said? Shenanigans?
Shenanigans, yeah.
Yeah, little shenanigans.
I gotta say, one of my favorite things to do in that game, I think you can like grab like a package and just like chuck it straight at somebody.
Chuck it. Oh yeah.
And that is one of the best, most satisfying things. It's very visceral and it impacts right, and they got the crunch on that real good.
Spoilers?
Anyway, sorry, go on.
No, you're good. Spoilers. I love that you do that and like essentially do that in the Higgs fight where you just like pound his ass with a PlayStation.
It's so ridiculous.
I love it. But this is my whole point is like the micro experience was excellent. That was very fun. But the macro, and when I mean macro, I mean like the context and the background of it, it didn't really resonate with me. There were some moments that I really enjoyed. Particularly, we actually had Tommy Earl Jenkins on our show, so shout out to him.
Remember.
And like some of his moments, like they really resonated with me. But from overall, like the story, the overarching story, didn't hit me as much as those micro experiences. So when you kind of explained how Death Stranding resonated with you, and then you went to be like, okay, from a critical perspective, well, I kind of felt like we were related. Like that was sort of a relatable feeling. I don't know. I hope I'm making sense.
I follow you. What I enjoyed about the game. So this is coming from a background in criticism, and also this is part of my background in poetry. I have two brains happening when I'm playing something. One is the pleasure brain of like, am I enjoying this? Do I think this is fun? Am I getting really excited by this? And the other one is the I don't want to call it non-judgmental, but I want to call it paused judgmental, which is the critical brain, where I'm like, you know what? I don't care if I enjoy this. I'm going to ask questions about it. I'm going to see if there's something valuable here, because ultimately a lot of the things that have been some of the most valuable art to me have been things that I did not enjoy, but that I was curious about, and that curiosity was then rewarded with a different kind of experience. So I've got both of those things going on at the same time. Because there was sort of a closed door on that game for me, like where I was like, okay, I'm done playing this. That's part of an experience that's packaged away. The critical, the kind of experience that I need for a critical response, which is to go through and to replay, is a little weaker than the enjoyment one. For what I enjoyed the moment to moment very much. I enjoyed they managed to hit this really nice middle ground between turning the brain on and banality, because sometimes you're doing the same things so many times, but it feels good because you're doing them in just slightly different ways. And that feels like there is a common language, a common design language that you're asked to refer back to moment to moment, but then you're asked to sort of innovate on it in different ways, whether it's different landscapes. I think that some of the areas where I had the most variety was on the other side of the Elders cabin, where there's this sort of like large ravine. There's a mule camp in the middle of it. And
yes.
There's this one guy you have to sort of get a rope and descend down to. That's an example.
The collector, I think it was.
Collector, yeah, that's it. I actually don't think I ever finished his side quests.
Getting down to that dude was the worst. But this is what I'm talking about, is like each character, I felt like each character, despite being essentially these objectives, or these point A to point B, or these essentially objective points, I felt like the gameplay gave them character. I think there's something, I forget if it's order number 420. I'm probably bullshitting on this, or it's made up shit. But apparently order 420 is the Elder sleeping medicine. And it's like, we all know what that sleeping medicine is. Let's not.
Oh, yeah. The Elder, I got to him after he went in BT. And I was like, whoa!
I'm trying to avoid that, okay? Like, I delivered to that man. I heard that you could do that, and I delivered to that man every day. But that's essentially what I'm talking about, is like those little moments, those little details give them so much character.
Yeah, before I continue with what I've experienced, how spoilery are we going to be on Death Stranding?
I mean,
if anybody's listening, we're about to get into major Death Stranding spoilers. Click off now.
Okay, cool.
Now you're good.
We'll do timestamps. How about that?
All right, that sounds good. Sounds good. If this thing is like, if director's cut's coming out, there might be a lot of people ready to experience it for the first time, who were waiting for this, waiting for the subsistence version.
Yes.
So yeah, just to kind of honor whatever they're going to experience.
Dude, the other day I was calling it Death Stranding Integral. So
that's not off mark, and I'm actually really glad to see. I'm really glad to see a return to an expanded edition, because one of the things that another thing that I really like about Kojima Productions' sort of general approach to design is what emerged in the VR missions for Metal Gear Solid 1 and Metal Gear Solid 2, which is having created, basically the VR missions are like, they feel like QA demos, where it's like, okay, we have to really test to see if our mechanics are as tight as we think they are. So here are a bunch of spaces with like 0 asset coverage, and we're just going to throw our mechanics in there and see if it works. And then they made like an extra package out of it. That's how it feels to me, and I have a lot of respect for that, because that shows a lot of love and pride in the system. Not in the way where it's like it has to be so airtight that only then do you feel like showing it off. It's like, hey, you know what? This thing's got this thing is like 90%, pun unintended, 90% solid, and that other 10%, you have to learn how to break this and play this like a QA professional in order to get the top score. Have at it, and I have a lot of love for that.
It also gives them an opportunity to get weird with it in not just mechanical ways, but just like the photography missions in MGS2.
I was actually going to say, it's interesting that you were talking about the lack of assets, because what I remember from VR Mission was like some of the like random assets that they added, like for instance, the mystery missions. You know, you get like a pair of glasses.
Yeah.
Like mission 10 is like just a bajillion random assets that are just red herrings.
I remember that. That's funny. No, I'm thinking just like the fact that most of the spaces are sort of these like monochromatic, like VR blocks, and that's so. But that's interesting, because if you take out that overhead, then you have more budget for big special things like Gurlagon, which I love. I love Gurlagon. I love Genola. I love Mecha Genola. I wish to see more kaiju Metal Gear.
I hope they do that in Death Stranding with these missions. There's got to be some weird ones.
Oh man, that would be. I mean, they kind of do have a kaiju in that game, come to think of it.
Stop making me want to buy a PlayStation 5. I'm about to buy a house.
Oh, that's I missed the rush on a PS5, so I'm on PS4 Pro for a while. But yeah, that'll be a good day. But in terms of moment to moment, I agree. I think that there's a lot to remember. I think that part of the beauty of that experience comes from, again, repetition and having it be chill enough to be something you can do while idle. And excuse me. Yeah, there's this sort of familiarity that I think we get with virtual spaces once we tread that ground often enough. And Death Stranding leans into that, both with the kind of actions that it asks you to do repetitively, and also with the size and love given to the landscape that itself.
Yes, to that point, I love how the way the game progresses, difficulty curve wise, with the actual environment. Like you said, it's a language, and it's able to, because it's so standardized, for lack of a better term. The concepts are so standardized but complex that when you hit those difficulty curves, it feels like a very organic challenge.
Yeah. Oh man, I always wanted to go back and spend more time in the snow-covered areas, because I think I spent the least time there, and also had some of the best times at it. oh God, there's this one slope. See, what's great about the landscape is I can actually remember where these things are in relation to each other, even not having played it for like a year.
Dude, yes.
This is where it's at a really high peak in the snow-covered area. You have to descend down it, and at the very bottom, you pop back into one of the sort of like greener landscape areas. And it's a really sharp decline, because that's the direction I was going on it, is and so there was a package that I wanted, and something happened. I tripped. I had my, sonic ring explosion of like, oh no, my things.
And the packages are beeping, BB's crying.
There's this one package that was just out of reach, and it was a little further down the slope, and I'm like, all right, gotta be real careful, get it. Jane, stop this crazy thing! And then all of a sudden, like, I fell, and then all my packages fell, and I kept tumbling without being able to stop down the entire mountainside. And I finally stopped. I'm like, okay, finally, the one package that caused all this, I can get it. And I reached out for it, and it happened again. And it's just like,
no.
It's like 3 minutes of just barrel rolling down this mountainside.
Have you ever seen Kung Pao Enter the Fist?
I have, a long time ago.
It's like the baby rolling down.
It's kind of like Homer Simpson in that episode of Simpsons where he falls down the mountain after he goes after Bart, and then like the helicopter gets him, and then he falls down again.
Yeah, he gets into the ambulance, like crashes into a tree that's like 5 feet in front of it.
Death Stranding, in a lot of ways, it seems like a multi-million-dollar version of Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy in some ways.
Yeah, I was struck by how QWOP-like the initial mechanics felt, where it's like, oh, it's a balance simulator. Okay. I've worn a rucksack before. I know this feeling, and I was like, I wonder when this is going to start feeling normal. And after a while, it did. And then I didn't have to think about it quite as much anymore. But that was I think that mechanic right there, the balancing mechanic, really lets you know that you're in for something different right at the start.
It's funny, when everybody started, the game came out and everybody did like the walking simulator meme. Part of me was like, that's kind of right, because there's something very intuitive about the walking in this game. And like you said, how you sort of progress and learn, and again, how intuitive it becomes.
On the level of narrative deployment, I felt like the stories that you get while doing deliveries were the most impactful because I was the most involved in them.
Yes,
and
totally agree.
And I feel like it's hard to, I don't know. The cutscenes were all welcome. They were all very well paced, and they were all exquisitely done. So that's not to really speak against them. It's just to say that as a player, when I am engaged in a story, then I feel a greater connection to it because I kind of am co-authoring it, and that felt very good. Something that I really enjoyed about and also just the VO work was exquisite. That the quality of life touches. I'm glad you mentioned Tommy Earl Jenkins because he did such a good job. I know, right?
So good. So good.
He had some of the most emotional scenes and was one of the most complex characters in that game, and he got the range just right. It was stunning. But yeah, no. The part of the game that struck me as most interesting on a sort of thematic level is precisely how integral economic unity is to developing any kind of political consciousness or any kind of sense of belonging. That trade is crucial to maintaining a social fabric. And it's Sam Porter Bridges. My wife and I were joking that every time we had somebody from UPS or the USPS delivering something to us, we needed to thank Sam Porter Bridges during the pandemic because it wound up being very appropriate.
Keep on keeping on.
Exactly.
Kojima Productions actually made these two little pamphlet type decals that you can stick on your door to thank postal workers and deliverymen.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh man, I missed that. That's
they're
beautiful.
like Death Stranding ones. I'll have to send them to you later.
I'd love to see that. Thank you. Yeah, and I'd love to get hold of those.
It's interesting that you talk about the concept of, we have to have we have to have trade, we have to have an economic system that depends on each other in order for that to have that connection, because I did understand that and appreciated that from, again, the overarching story. But I felt like I resonated with that message more. And this is a bit of a controversial topic because some people think it essentially extinguished the difficulty. But I kind of felt that way when I would get other items from other some porters, like, when you're in a boss fight and, all of a sudden you see a naked Ghost Sam, like, throw you a rocket launcher.
Yeah.
Or like you are... Chiral boots are at their very last leg.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that mechanic.
Suddenly you find like another pair of boots just to get you to your last point. Like having that, knowing that I'm able to support other people like that and those people are supporting me. I know it's in some ways the way it's programmatically it's a bit artificial, but it still works. It still resonates a little more for me than the overarching plot.
Yeah, I felt like that is an example where this is Death Stranding is kind of like Kojima Productions shot it like a Souls-like, and I felt like so much of what you were doing with delivering packages was reflected in the multiplayer element that they had. And I felt like that was actually an example of the kind of design unity that I really think of as being a trademark of KP games. Basically, the thing about package delivery, as anybody who has had a package delivered, which we all sure have in the past year, knows, is package delivery is one of the most basic forms of asymmetrical communication. It is something that somebody sends. They are not present for its pickup. You are not present for its delivery, but the whole thing works because there is this sort of element of trust involved that I can pass an envelope onto the USPS. The USPS will do their own thing, and then they'll pass it on and leave it at the doorstep or in the mailbox, whoever it is. It's all asymmetrical. Nobody makes contact. Yet at the same time, it is also one of the most important forms of contact because it is one of the things that allows us to achieve a sort of political and economic unity. And so the gameplay really digging deep into that and letting other players support you. And I forget how that happens in real time. I remember that happening to me, but I don't remember how I contributed to that. But yeah, the fact that can happen in real time, but you also know it is asymmetrical because I don't believe the multiplayer was one-to-one enough where somebody was actively doing it.
It's a bit of a black box.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, I know for sure that I never threw somebody something. At least I don't remember doing that. And so I'm thinking that, okay, so this is asymmetrical as well. So the gameplay is asymmetrical. The messaging is asymmetrical. The delivery is asymmetrical. This is entirely about building a community on asymmetrical communication. And I found that I critically fascinating, and I thought demonstrated a kind of unity, a unified vision that I thought was very strong.
Once again, my point stands. You just did this thing where it's like, I may have not noticed. I mean, you may have not noticed, but your brain did.
Yeah, I mean, it's meta-narratively cogent. So,
well, it's crazy because like I feel like, like I understood why it worked as a meta-narrative. Like I felt it. Like you said, criticism is taking a feeling and putting it into like a conceptual context. And like I feel like I just had this experience because I didn't ever I knew about it because we just talked about it, like the certain way, like the certain little details, but I never thought of that asymmetrical aspect and how it related to actually delivering. So
yeah, that was that's an example of, just in terms of my own process, that's an example of having that critical brain, not really care if I'm interested in something, but sort of be curious, because a lot of times I was playing it, I was kind of like, I think that you kind of when I play a video game now, especially after like, okay, so as an example, I will do 30 minutes of yoga and then I will go play Resident Evil 8 and I'm like, wow, I am now super tense and I just completely washed out all the benefit I got from that yoga. And so
hell yeah.
But one of the things that I do is like when I'm playing a game is I kind of like pause and sort of check in with how am I feeling? Am I feeling tense physically? What's going on? And so I kind of like have these sort of like just overall sensations of like, I'm really into this. I'm really on edge. I think I need to take a step back. And one of the things that you do come to realize, like, I'm bored and there's a kind of relaxation that is not quite engaged. And Death Stranding actually prompted more of those responses than the sort of like tension moments, such that when I actually fought the mules, I had to sort of rouse myself and sort of, and it's boredom is maybe not the right word for it, but I actually don't think boredom is a negative thing. It's almost a more of a hypnotic absorbing state, and that being in that and not really caring whether or not I was excited, and sort of enabled me to sort of process these things and sort of observe what was going on. So. Just in terms of critical process.
To sum it up in sloppy vernacular, it is a very chill game.
Yes, it is a chill game.
I think it pulled back an extremely old game design philosophy, which I felt has been lost for a long time. And I have 44 hours in Death Stranding. When it came out, I watched other people play it to see the cutscenes. I thought this game wasn't made for me. I'm not going to enjoy this game. It wasn't made for me. I hope other people enjoy it, but I'm going to, see what he did because. I love the guy. I want to see his work, right? But I knew it wasn't for me. And having played it, I definitely still feel it's just not a game that was made for me. But there's so the original game designer from World of Warcraft, now I don't remember his name, but he was on an interview once and he was talking about how in the game your health and mana and resources would deplete, and it would make you you'd sit in the game and eat and drink, right, to regain your health and mana. And during that time, they specifically made it this way. So during that time, you would be sat stationary in the world and you would look around at everything and you would plan out, you would be forced to like be immobile for a little bit, and you would look at the map and you would work out where you're going and how to approach terrain and how to tackle the next quest or whatever you were doing. I think Death Stranding does that exact same thing. It forces you to be stationary and just look at the world, and that is gone from games. Like games are now just like go go go, next thing. It makes you rush for the game. I mean, even World of Warcraft's gone that way, right?
Yes,
it's just a
let's not
big
get
rush.
Started on that.
So I think it's cool that they looked backwards at old game design philosophies and put that into a modern game. That's my favorite thing about it, I'd say.
Yeah, I think that in terms of priorities, it emphasizes play rather than game, which is play is sort of that sort of unstructured free-form thing you do as a kid, and then as an adult when you're paying attention to things, when you're sort of like lost in things, and game is. There's almost more of a science behind it. It's about rules, it's about restrictions and limitations, and that is valuable to be aware of. But different, and it's also, it's craft for game design, right? Like you have to be aware of that, have to lean on it. And Death Stranding absolutely does. But one of the things that sort of my understanding of what you're describing is they leave room for play, and play is cognitive as well as physical. Yeah. It's allowing yourself to sort of wander. There's a Walt Whitman, he valorizes, I think, creative loafing is what he calls it, and I also value that as a person who enjoys being alive, and am pretty happy when a game does. Well,
this is essentially the ethos of let's call them Neo Kojima Productions with Homo Ludens, those who play.
Can you tell me a little more about that? I actually know less about that than I think you do. I
probably know about as much as you do, honestly, because it is sort of a little cryptic. But I guess the idea of Homo Ludens comes from, I can't remember if it was from a book or what. But as far as Kojima Productions treats it, the idea is that as the world advances, as we become more technologically proficient, we become less of a species geared towards work and more of a species geared towards leisure. And that is sort of the philosophy behind new Kojima Productions. Is Homo Ludens is a new type of human that is focused more on exploring ways of play than exploring ways of work.
Have you read why am I blanking on his name? The anthropologist and late medieval historian wrote Homo Ludens. Huizinga, that's it. Have you read Homo Ludens by Johann Huizinga? Okay, I might be mispronouncing his last name. I have been told that I do, and I don't remember if I internalized the right one.
But I think that's what I was trying to think of. Like, I'm aware of it, but I have not read it. I need to read more. So
it's Huizinga's. It's a pretty, I wouldn't say breezy read, but it's pretty accessible. Huizinga is really good because he was a scholar who. It's very hard to find scholars like this now because specialization and accreditation is more important now than it was in the late 19th century. And he was like, well, you know what? I'm interested in this. I'm going to write a bunch about it and probably be 90% right and 10% super inspirational. And so he's got another book, The Autumn of the Middle Ages, which is his interest in sort of late French Middle Asia art and history. But so then he turned his attention to games and play. And that's what Homo Ludens is. And it is about play as the structuring unit of society, about how an anthropology based on play would be more fruitful for understanding where we are and where we're going than other anthropologies. And that
sounds exactly like
connects very closely to what you're describing.
Yeah, then that's what they're referencing.
Yeah. So I recommend it. Also, there's if you read it, there is I have my own podcast called the Delta Ed Podcast where we talk about poetry and games. And one of my most recent guests has a podcast called Game Study Buddies where I think they talk about that. So if you read that and want to hear more about that, they're very thoughtful on it too. So that could maybe lean into some of kind of understanding maybe more where the new KP's coming from.
So in the worst segue ever, on the subject of reading more, tell us a bit about Monstrous Births.
Oh, yeah, sure. Monstrous Births. Well, I mean, it's not that bad of a segue because it was also very divisive. And I feel like Metal Gear Solid 4 is an experiment that it's an experiment that includes little hooks to kind of understand what is happening in it, and it is not super obvious about it. It doesn't sort of push it into your face. And I think the Monstrous Births, it developed as its thesis, which is that after enough sequels and after enough remixing of different elements and changing their relationships, the world of Metal Gear has gotten defragmented such that the wrong associations are connected to the wrong figures. And so by going through and taking out the Patriots AI and reducing and basically unlocking all of these characters from the shackles of being in sequels, then it's able to effectively defragment the narrative world of Metal Gear, and characters are able to assume their rightful destinies. And that's kind of the high level of it. And it came from, there's this one little mechanic that I still think is very cool in Metal Gear Solid 4, where there will be a scene or a moment or a posture where you'll get it'll linger on it for a second. You'll have a little X icon in the lower right, and you hit the X button on the controller, and you'll get a bunch of grainy flashes from previous games in the series where that particular image has shown up. And initially, it sort of passes off as like, oh, by the way, there's so much lore here that you need to be reminded in the moment what this is referring to. But none of the references are necessarily one-to-one. Like, why do I need to know that Big Boss saluted the grave of the boss at the opening of Metal Gear Solid 4 when Old Snake is saluting somebody's grave? That's not Old Snake. Why does that? How do they have a relationship? Well, we're combining the two. We're thinking Snake and Big Boss are the same person, and this image is telling us that. It's a very back of the brain association that you're just making as you play these games. And I think it is a game that is hyper focused on its core audience knowing a lot. It's hyper-focused on the core audience knowing as much about Metal Gear as the developers do. And so from that angle, I think the experiment has a flaw in terms of how many people it can reach. But like once you take that notion of all the associations are wrong, people's destinies and fates are screwed up because the Patriot system, the fact that we have to have these sequels constantly repeating the same patterns, is basically catching everybody up in the past. And then defeating that releases them from the past, enables them to go in the future. That is very interesting to me. And I still feel that the game can be read from that point of view. That's what Monstrous Births essentially is. You can read the whole thing, and there's evidence and screen caps and stuff like that from it. But I think it is very interesting, and I think it's... I don't know how I would have executed it differently because it requires so much knowledge and familiarity with this sort of like bulk of lore that MGS carried with it at that point.
It's I'm gonna stumble over my words more than likely here, but with Metal Gear Solid 2, there was a very clear idea, lesson, meta element to it that it's very openly communicated through the game that this is a game not just about sequels, but about information and the relationship we have with it. MGS2 is about memes. It doesn't hide that fact. There's a clear theme to it. When you get to MGS4, even though there is a theme to it, it's kind of an abstract theme.
Yes.
Well,
go on. I hear you.
You might be able to put this better than I will, but the theme word for that game is sense, and that alone can be seen in a few different ways, and they treat it in a few different ways. In one way, they use the word sense to mean your literal senses, touch, taste, smell, and so on. But in another sense, to use that word. It could mean it sort of seems to mean like the intangible part of a person that defines who they are that they can't pass on, right? Your soul, your will. I think that's how Kojima described it at one point, was like it's your sense of will almost, and it was something that he struggled to pass on to the development team after MGS 2 and 3. Which is why he had to step in again and sort of try to communicate, you've got the skills, you've got the ideas, but you're not really getting it in a way, if that makes sense.
Excuse me.
So maybe you can sort of give words to what I'm trying to communicate here, because I'm kind of drowning.
No, I think you got it, and I think that slots in very closely with sort of my take on the game, is that your sense, there's to play off the words in English, there's sense, there's something that makes sense, there's sensibility, and that implies a kind of alignment, right? And so if you are in your proper senses, you are aligned, you're bodily, mentally, everything is cogent, everything is present in working order. And that's what is not present in Metal Gear Solid 4. Old Snake is conflated with Big Boss. What are some of the other ones? I'm forgetting. That's the one that I remember the most. But yeah, you have characters that are just sort of mashed up with, in some cases, their opposites from the way the imagery suggests. So the sense is gone, and at the end, once the Patriot system is wiped out, all of a sudden everything is good. You get the three good you get the good endings to previous Metal Gear games that didn't happen. At the end of Metal Gear Solid 1, Meryl and Snake ride off into the Arctic sunset, Meryl not wearing sleeves. How did that work? And I replayed through Twin Snakes recently and noticed that, which I have love Twin Snakes now, by the way. I didn't think that would happen, but it did. But yeah, so they're riding off into the sunset, but because there has to be a sequel, that can't succeed. That relationship has to fail because you have to return everybody back to zero. And so, but then Meryl and Johnny, they're married. They have a wedding. Love wins. And that's what happens when you break the cycle of sequels. Now, Meryl can be perfectly happy because she will never show up in another video game ever again, and that will never be compromised. And that is what happens when you break the Patriot system, and that is what happens when you stop making sequels. Happy endings last. And that's what I think sense means. That's so I agree with you completely, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I ran out of things to say. You pretty much got it. So.
Sorry. I don't mean to take.
I was kind of hoping you would do that because I struggle to find the words to explain this. Again, that's one of your skills, is that you can sort of articulate these ideas better than anyone else, and a lot of the times, people might sort of have an intuition about these things, but they can't quite put it into words.
We actually also made an agreement to not try to push you into the deep end to explain this stuff. So the fact that you kind of eased into it totally fine makes me feel a lot better.
The way you said that, Nitroid, I feel like you do that for a lot of things I feel about current discourse on Metal Gear. Like, something will happen and I feel a certain way and I just can't find the right sentence for it, and then you write something and I'm just like, yeah, I can just retweet that. You've explained it. It's great.
I hate to be repetitive, but again, you might not have noticed, but your brain did.
Yeah. Oh man. So the Tom Olsen.
Yeah.
Is that right? Am I remember the name right? Yeah. That was ace. That was brilliant. As soon as I saw that happening, I was like, oh, someone has substance. Someone has the.
I'm so glad you realized that.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, someone opened up demo theater. No, not demo theater. It was the model viewer. Model viewer. Yeah, and I'm like, all right, someone is finally making use of this, and that was a brilliant, brilliant thing. I was on the edge of my seat, and I want to let you know that was one of the most thrilling experiences I have had with the internet.
Thank you so much.
It's great,
man. That coming from you, that means a hell of a lot, really. God, man, amazing. I gotta tell you, oh my God.
There were times where we were crying on the phone about that shit.
I was,
no cap.
When I started that thing, I just wanted to take some funny photos. Like, the idea of a janitor at the Big Shell was really funny to me. And I just wanted to I wanted to shitpost. That was essentially what it was just me shitposting. And then I was just getting a little creative with it, and Konami retweeted it and sort of played in on the joke, and I thought that was like, oh, that's really funny. Thanks, guys. And that was nice, but then it just sort of took a turn. And
yeah, as Donald Glover says, that's when the world went crazy.
Yeah. And everybody started thinking that was going to be a real thing. And I legitimately have a playlist on YouTube of 20 videos that were made about Tom Olsen, wondering what he's going to announce.
I want you to share that with me, because I would love to watch those.
And not all of them are in English either. It just I was looking at this like, oh my God, what have I gotten into? These people are going to tar and feather me when they realize it. and so
something on the internet isn't what it seems.
So I made that comment where I was like, okay, I don't work for Konami, but I'd love to. Like, because I didn't want to break character, right? Like, I'm committed to the bit, and
yeah, no, that is one thing that that is something that I have so much respect for the way character was maintained. It was a consistent tone. It didn't break. It had a really good build up, and the payoff was just exquisite.
It was made basically at the spur of the moment. At a breakneck pace. I was figuring it out as I went. Thank you.
You did a great job.
I'm so glad I didn't get killed by someone for that.
It was the purest expression of love for the game that I think everyone who loves that game really felt and went along with. And yeah, it was like we while we knew that it wasn't something new for the game, it still felt like it was. Like, it still felt like it was.
Yeah. I agree.
Thank you. So we're coming up on about an hour and a half, which is pretty long for us, actually. We usually go about an hour to an hour and a half.
Yeah, I was low-key thinking if we needed, a part 2 for this.
But
no, sorry. If you all need to wrap up.
No, well, I was going to say, Did you wanna tell people where they can find you online if they want to follow your work or your projects, anything like that? Plug away.
Yeah, of course. You can follow me on Twitter on Adilegian. It's Adilegian. That is my favorite Old English verb, and that's and no one knows how to pronounce it or spell it, so that's it. Then there is Delta Head Media is the Twitch channel that I stream on. I've been streaming twice weekly. So that's one place that you can sort of see what I'm up to and say hi as well.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Jay, I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
You just cracked open our brains, man.
You've been on my list for a while,
you for having me.
So I'm glad I could get you to come on. I really, really do appreciate it. Now I gotta go bug Ryan Payton.
It was genuinely really nice to speak to you, and I definitely want to throw some ideas your way for the future if you have time for that. With some Metal Gear Solid 3 stuff.
Yeah, please do send it my way, and I'm gonna watch that speed run again.